The moment my wife leaned over the high-end dinner table and hissed into my ear to shut my father up because his heavy accent was embarrassing her in front of her snobbish family, I felt something inside me break. My father had spent 40 years working to grueling shifts a day, sacrificing his own health to fund my education and build the very life I was now living. Yet here was my wife treating him like a second-class citizen just because his words did not roll off his tongue with polished arrogance. I did not raise my voice or start a scene at the restaurant. I simply looked her in the eyes and said, "Okay." She thought she had won the argument and put my old man in his place. She had no idea that my silence was not submission. It was the calm before the storm that would completely shatter her world by sunrise. My name is Mark and I come from very humble beginnings. My father immigrating to this country had nothing but a strong work ethic and a deep love for his family. He worked as a mechanic 4 decades, grease permanently stained under his fingernails. His English was never perfect and his heavy accent remained a reflection of his roots. But through every struggle, he ensured I lacked nothing. He paid for my tuition at a top-tier university, which allowed me to launch a high-performing career in corporate finance. 3 years ago, I married Sarah. When we met, she seemed sweet and grounded, but as my income grew and we moved into a prestigious neighborhood, her priorities shifted. She became obsessed with status image and keeping up appearances with her wealthy relatives who looked down on anyone not born into privilege. The tension reached a boiling point during a formal dinner celebrating her brother getting a major promotion. My father had traveled across the state to attend. He was so proud of our family and wanted to share in the joy. During the meal, my father tried to engage in the conversation, sharing a story about his early days starting out in business. Because of his accent and simple phrasing, Sarah's brother subtly smirked while her mother exchanged condescending looks. Instead of defending my father, Sarah leaned close to me and hissed loudly enough for me to hear, "Make your dad stop talking, he is embarrassing us." I looked at my father, who had just caught the cruel expression on her face, and quietly lowered his head. That was the exact moment I realized my marriage was built on a foundation of disrespect. I gently placed my hand on my father's shoulder and whispered that it was time for us to leave. Sarah glared at me in shock as we excused ourselves from the table. On the drive home, my father kept apologizing, thinking he had ruined the evening for me. I told him he had done absolutely nothing wrong and that he was the greatest man I knew. Once my father was asleep in the guest room, I walked into my home office. I opened my safe and pulled out a file I had prepared months ago when I first noticed Sarah's vanity metastasizing into cruelty. The next morning, Sarah walked into the kitchen acting as if nothing had happened, expecting me to brush her disrespect under the rug like I always did. Without saying a single word, I slid a single white document across the marble kitchen island. She picked it up, expecting an invitation or a bank statement. Instead, her eyes widened as she read the top line, which clearly stated petition for dissolution of marriage. Before she could scream or launch into an angry tirade, I spoke up with absolute calm. I reminded her that the house she was standing in, the cars in our garage, and the status she bragged about were built on the foundation of the sacrifices my father made. I told her that disrespecting the man who gave me everything meant disrespecting me. I had also attached a copy of our prenuptial agreement showing that the assets remained entirely mine. As tears of realization filled her eyes, I walked out the front door with my father to take him to breakfast, leaving her alone with the consequences of her arrogance. Respect is not something you offer only when it is convenient or when someone fits your superficial standard of perfection. The people who sacrifice the most to lift us up deserve our highest protection and deepest honor. Never sacrifice your loyalty to your family for someone who only loves the lifestyle you provide. Sarah learned too late that real wealth is honor, integrity, and gratitude, items that no amount of money or high status can ever purchase.